Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Valtiera. Welcome to City of STEM and this Latino Health Today segment. We are covering COVID and anxiety. Now, I know that in this era, everybody's feeling anxious, and first of all, I want to let everyone know that that is totally normal. In fact, you might be a little abnormal if you weren't feeling some sort of anxiety with everything that's going on. And to help you out with all of these emotions and this anxiety that's going on, we have the esteemed Dr. Shanna Duran, who is an expert in treating anxiety and anxiety disorders, with us here today to help us explore this whole topic. Now, I know that sometimes I feel anxiety for sure, and sometimes, whether it's due to fear of COVID, being isolated because of COVID, having to stay home and do schoolwork because of COVID. If you're a parent, you've got to work at home and be with your kids, all because of COVID. Even talking about it can make us all a little bit anxious. So with that, I want to ask Dr. Shanna to help us understand what actually is anxiety. I think it's a term that we kind of understand, but no one ever really defines it.
This is true. Anxiety, it's a word that actually causes me anxiety when I have to define it, because there isn't one set definition that we'd like to have. But essentially, anxiety, and not an anxiety disorder, but anxiety, something that we all experience, is a sense of nervousness or worry and possibly impending doom. It's the worry of uncertainty. What's going to happen next?
Okay, so let's explore a little bit about that uncertainty. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because we may have members of the audience who don't even understand what that could mean for them.
Well, uncertainty is something that exists. However, most of us tolerate uncertainty quite a bit. We don't always know the exact time we're going to eat lunch. We don't know the exact time that we're going to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
But we could tolerate that uncertainty. But when it comes to COVID, there is so much uncertainty.
Right. Like we're uncertain when we can stop wearing these masks. We're uncertain when school might open or if it's going to close again. We're uncertain if people are going to get jobs back. I mean, these are realities, right?
We're uncertain as to who's going to get sick. That's a very scary thing, because we don't know. We have an idea of the people who are going to get sick, but it's not a guarantee. And that really creates a lot of high anxiety for people. We just don't have the predictability.
Okay. So before we even go any further, I want to address this idea of uncertainty just like for a real quick hit, like the things that we can be certain of. Like I can be certain that I can wash my hands every time I come back from outside or something like that, or if I touch a doorknob, I know that I can control that, right? So that's a level of certainty that I can guarantee for myself.
Yes, and it's the best thing that we could do, especially when you leave the home. You come back in, you wash your hands for 20 seconds, and it is definitely something you can control.
Okay, and mask wearing. We can be certain to put on our masks.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
I think what gets scary for people is that not everyone wears a mask, and we can't control for those people, but we can wear a mask, and we can also choose to distance ourselves from people who aren't wearing a mask.
Right. Like you and me right now. I like you. I'd like to be closer to you, but I can't, so there we are. Okay, so now, speaking of anxiety, what are some of the symptoms of anxiety? Because I think that is probably different for everybody, yeah?
There are some classic symptoms of anxiety, like the rapid heart, you're sweating, trembling, dizziness. For younger kids, they will complain oftentimes of a stomach ache, they can't sleep, they're irritable at times, they have poor concentration and focus.
What about eating? Does it affect the way people can eat?
It can. Some people just can't eat, or they feel nauseous, they think they're going to throw up, and some people find eating soothing.
Okay. Do some people eat more than they used to, maybe?
They could definitely eat more than they used to, especially with comfort foods.
Okay, now Here's another question, and Dr. Shannon and I go way back, and she's had a hard time explaining anxiety to me because I'm just not that smart. But I always thought anxiety was kind of the same for everybody. So is it fair to say that anxiety symptoms can be very individual and they vary from person to person? And could they vary even for one person, like one instance of anxiety might not be the same as the next one?
Yes, they could vary within an individual.
Okay.
So when the cameras turned on and we started talking, I became anxious. My mouth got a little dry. Other times when I'm feeling anxiety, I'll get a rapid heartbeat and I just can't focus. So even within myself, I could talk about a different range of symptoms. And so everybody needs to check in with themselves and identify what their symptoms are. Now, these symptoms of anxiety can also be symptoms of other things. So, excuse me, if we're excited, let's say, oh, we're coming to the Space Center here.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's
For
an
me,
amazing
it was very
center.
exciting. So I started to get a rapid heartbeat, but because I was coming to the center, I interpreted that rapid heartbeat as excitement, not as anxiety. So the symptoms of anxiety, depending on the context, could be symptoms of excitement or happiness, joy.
So for me, like, I happen to love roller coasters. The idea of getting on a roller coaster makes me super excited. And so, yet I still get that rapid heartbeat, I get a little giddy, I do a little dance, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm getting on a roller coaster. But for other people, that might terrify them.
So same symptoms and different interpretation.
Okay.
So it really is how we interpret a situation.
Okay, so now that makes me wonder, and as I was thinking about this last night, and I thought, how does somebody know when they're actually feeling anxious versus like I just ran around the block and my heart's beating fast because I ran around the block? So how does somebody recognize within themselves, oh, I must be having a little anxious moment here?
It's usually the fear and the thoughts associated with those symptoms.
Okay.
So when you run around the block, it's in the context of running. You understand why it is your heart rate went up.
Okay.
But when you have a thought with these symptoms of anxiety, that thought now can potentially become scary for someone.
I see. So can we give a clear example of that? So I'm thinking maybe if I'm a student working from home, haven't seen my fellow classmates, and maybe there's a test coming up that I haven't been able to study with my normal study buddy, maybe the thought of, wow, I haven't been able to do that, and am I prepared? And maybe that is anxiety inducing. Is that?
Definitely so. So if we break that up a bit, because most people are staying at home and there's not a lot of opportunity to go outside, a lot of people haven't seen their friends. And many people will say, well, I don't have social anxiety. I don't normally get nervous talking to my friends. But when you haven't seen them for a while and you see them, people might experience anxiety.
Interesting.
What do I say to them? They're in person. It's a whole new experience.
Is it okay to, oh no, I can't hug them. I mean, for a lot, I know I'm a hugger. I grew up in a family of huggers. So for me not to hug somebody is not fun for me. I'm like, wait, I want to hug.
So we're changing our behavior, but trying to maintain our sense of self.
Right, okay. And do you think that COVID is affecting students, parents, and educators differently at different levels? Help us understand that.
Oh, absolutely. I think, the older you are, the better able the better able you are to understand what this all means, and the seriousness and the unpredictability of COVID. The younger you are, it doesn't make sense, and so in terms of communicating with younger kids, we really want to keep it simple. Make sure you wash your hands. You don't want to get sick, but we don't want to instill this fear to trigger an anxiety disorder.
Right, because that I think is probably a really fine line, because there's a lot of news, and COVID is very serious, right? I mean, unfortunately, many people have died, and I'm sure people have lost loved ones who may be watching now. And so I think they really do understand exactly how serious this is. and yet we can't stop living our lives, right? We still have to go to school, we still have to go to work, we still have to, do the dishes and brush our teeth even.
Yes, still doing the basics, and it's really important to have some sense of normalcy within this not so normal period of time. And we're constantly receiving information, and it's evolving over time. So younger kids might not be aware of when this all started, and so in talking to them, you again want to keep it simple as the mask continually falls down. You want to keep it simple for kids, and not instill, if you're a parent, your fear and anxiety into the child. And for a teenager, teenagers might have their own questions, and let them ask their questions and talk about the risk. Teenagers are going to have questions, and you want to encourage them to ask their questions.
Right.
And as a parent, you want to be able to have some answers, and there's great resources to look to, like the CDC.
Right.
To find factual
CDC.com.
information.
Yeah, CDC.com has wonderful information on COVID.
The Center for Disease Control.
Yeah. And I think we can also use this as an opportunity, especially if you're studying subjects in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. This is kind of like a real life laboratory. And so you can spark that interest in science going, wow, look at this, all this science developing as we're living it. And that's, to me, that's one way to kind of reduce this worry and fear, because I know that as humans and as a country and as a community, we will get through this. And we will figure it out. And yes, it's painful. And I think just acknowledging all of these things, knowing that all these thoughts that I'm having are probably shared among many people. And as I talk to friends, we're all kind of like, yeah, I feel that way too. And that helps reduce the anxiety and the worry and that feeling of uncertainty.
I want to go back to the term anxiety, because I think it merits more explanation. So again, the same symptoms of excitement are the same symptoms of anxiety. But again, anxiety comes with different thoughts. And when they're paired with those symptoms of anxiety, they become identified as fearful thoughts.
Okay.
And regardless of age, from a small child to an adult, it's important to identify what thoughts are triggering anxiety.
Okay.
And to find necessary information that's factual to kind of help lessen the anxiety. And this creates some predictability, and it's really, really important. In the beginning of COVID, we didn't really know what this was all about. We heard the news reports and people were dying. We're in a different place now. People are certainly still dying, but less so. And we know how to treat COVID much better. And that's encouraging. And this is also what I'm hearing from my friends who are doctors on the wards in the hospital.
Okay.
Much better at treating it.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Okay. So then what advice would you give to kids who can recognize that they're feeling anxious? And what can we tell them, simple ways to just manage their own anxiety before, it gets even worse?
Well, the good thing, any advice that I have, it's not just for kids or adolescents or teenagers. It's for everybody. Keeping a daily routine is crucial. It's not so easy, I understand, because everyone's at home and they're going to school on Zoom, but you want to keep some sense of normalcy. So you want to go to school if you're a kid or a teenager, but you want to take some downtime and you want to go play games. Exercise is really important as part of a routine, just to kind of shake off all that nervous energy and to shake off all the stress of the day from sitting in front of Zoom.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So would you say like waking up around the same time every day? If you shower in the morning, then keep doing that. Obviously brushing your teeth, having meals at the same time like you used to.
Absolutely. Keeping a routine. So that means waking up around the same time. You can have a little slack on the weekends, but
okay.
practice some self-compassion here.
Okay.
Definitely. When you have time to take a break, a 10-minute in between classes, or if you're at work, you want to go get a snack, do something healthy.
Maybe some jumping jacks or something.
Jumping jacks, definitely. Hygiene is really important. You want to take a shower every day, definitely brush your teeth. Wash your hands when it's appropriate. If you leave the house and come back in, obviously you want to wash your hands. After you go to the bathroom, you want to wash your hands. You don't need to go overboard. We don't want everyone washing their hands until their hands are peeling.
No, that would not be good.
But exercise, going to sleep at a routine time, these are all things that are very important. And to the greatest of ability, try to control for boredom. I hear that from everyone. I am so bored. I am so bored.
Interesting.
Because there's not that much to do.
Right. So when I was a kid, if we said, "Mom, I'm bored," she would point to the wall of books in our house and say, "That'll cure your boredom. Go read a book." And she was right. I mean, I'm glad she told us that, because we all became very good readers, and we read a lot of books on different topics. And that actually helped when we got further into school and into college. It really helped open our worlds into what was possible. And when I think about kids studying STEM, I think, books are such a wonderful resource, and the LA Public Library you can get them online. You don't have to go anywhere anymore. And it's such a wonderful way to stave off that boredom. And also reading novels, brings in a lot of fun. So I think that fun has to be built into everybody's routines.
Absolutely.
Is that
I'm
fair?
not a big TV fan, but if you're going to watch TV, preferably comedy. Stay away from the news.
Yeah.
Stay away from social media if you can.
Oh, let's explore that a little bit. Yeah, social media. How does that play into people's anxiety levels?
I get a lot of phone calls from parents telling me that their kids are definitely struggling.
Okay.
There's so much pressure to perform well on social media, whatever that means to someone, and it's wreaking havoc. I'm not a big proponent of it. There's a time and a place for it, but that needs to be kept limited. It's not a real world. People tend to post only the most positive of pictures, as though they're having this dream life, and that's not the reality. We are all, the entire world is experiencing COVID. And to think that some people are just having the best of time with this and there are no problems is not true, but social media tends to kind of create a fantasy, or by the same token, there are a lot of scare tactics. And so there's so much information on there that isn't very helpful.
Got it.
And it makes it hard to stay positive. And given all the, given how scary life is now with this uncertainty, it's important to also take a moment to think about the positive things in life. What I've noticed is there tends to be a lot of anger, and people want to blame others because this just doesn't make sense, and it's got to be somebody's fault, and it's not about fault. It's about taking care of ourselves, controlling what we can, and being kind to others. We forget about kindness in all of this.
Be kind. And it really starts with being kind to ourselves, right? So even if a person is having an anxious moment, recognize it, and say, oh, wow, I'm having a little struggle for now, even if it's just 5 minutes. But I think recognizing it and calling it by name, in a sense. Like, I know what this is, and I'm going to call it out. And even that act alone, at least for me, has been helpful in going, okay, that's what that is. I know I have tools to handle that.
Sometimes we just need to slow down and take a deep breath.
Ah, the deep breath. That's very helpful. In fact, I took a deep breath before we started recording, because I was feeling a little bit anxious.
Now, I was feeling a bit more anxious than you. I tend to use a scale of 0, no anxiety, 10 to the highest, and my anxiety coming in today was at about a 7, so that's pretty high.
Okay.
And the tendency when our anxiety is high is to want to flee the situation, run from this perceived danger. And we don't need to run. It's within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we could tolerate these symptoms. They're not dangerous, these symptoms. And the reason why I didn't flee to some kind of safety, like the safety of my car, and the reason why I didn't drive home is because I believe in having this discussion and presenting valuable information. So yes, I experienced anxiety, and that's okay. It doesn't stop me from doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then what advice would you give to parents to help their kids manage the anxiety? Because I think we would want everyone to be able to recognize it when they're experiencing it and use these tools to just kind of go, okay, this is what's happening. I know I can handle this, without denying that it's happening.
Right.
So what can parents do to help their kids help themselves?
Well, parents need to check in with their kids and see how they're doing, see if they have any questions.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to them the importance of hygiene, explain to them the importance of staying with school, and then after school taking a break and doing some jumping jacks, like you said, or some kind of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
The parents don't need to hover too much and always be looking for a symptom of anxiety, but be available and encourage your kids
Mm-hmm.
to come talk to you
Okay.
about it. Kids, teenagers, adolescents, actually humans generally speaking, are pretty resilient.
Yeah.
So it's okay to have anxiety. We can't control for that. Everyone gets anxiety. So the
Mm-hmm.
goal isn't to push it away, it's to allow for it to just pass. It can't always stay at a 10 out of 10 forever
Okay.
if your anxiety gets that high. It could stay at a 3 for a while. It could stay at a 4. That's typically pretty tolerable for people. And generally speaking, at that low of a level of anxiety, a 3 out of 10, we could shift our focus and do things that need to be done, such
Okay.
as school, such as activities, such as reading.
Okay, so I want to explore a little bit more about these levels of anxiety. So you've mentioned, 0 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
So in your experience, does everyone kind of understand that scale? Do little kids get that too?
Well, with little kids, I don't use a 0 to 10 scale. Actually, I have a paper in my office that it's a distress meter. So there's a crying face, kind of a neutral face, and a happy face. And little
Okay.
kids could just kind of point to where they are
Oh, okay.
in terms of their mood. Actually, I use the same distress meter for adults. We don't have to have a number. A 10 out of
Right.
10 would be the worst anxiety.
Right.
Fortunately, the worst anxiety, our bodies will fatigue and that anxiety will come down on
Okay,
its own.
explain what that means.
So a 10 out of 10 anxiety, we could also call it a panic attack or an anxiety attack.
Okay.
It's when we have all of these symptoms of anxiety, and it's usually the heartbeat, the not being able to think clearly, and it's just associated with a scary thought.
Okay.
And it's the worst thought possible, and at a 10 out of 10, we believe that worst thing is going to happen.
Okay.
And people don't know what to do with that experience.
Okay.
And the goal isn't to think your way out of it, because it's an emotion. We can't logically get out of a high level of emotion.
That's the part I have trouble understanding.
So sometimes I kind of swap out anxiety for laughter. If you're watching a comedy and you are laughing so hard, like you're ready to wet your pants, you're laughing so hard.
Okay.
You don't try to stop laughing. And in fact, the efforts to stop laughing will create more laughing. I don't know about you, but when I was in school,
Yes.
when someone got the giggles
Yes.
and they're just laughing, and then everyone else starts laughing, and the teacher says, stop laughing, and then people try to suppress it, and it gets worse. Then the whole room is laughing again.
Okay.
If we just let the kids laugh, eventually they're going to stop. It's a little trickier to do with anxiety.
Okay.
So with anxiety, if people get that really rapid heartbeat, which is what I tend to get, not everyone gets it, I'll put my hand on my heart and wait for my heart rate to come down.
Okay.
So I'm allowing for these symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just having math trouble today. What really interferes with people is their thoughts. They don't know what to do with their thoughts.
Ah, okay.
For example, if someone thinks that's it, I have COVID, and their anxiety goes to a 10, and they're struggling to breathe, if it's a parent watching a child, it's okay to hold the child's hand and just allow for them to feel that and talk soothingly to them.
Okay.
And when the anxiety comes down, which it will, then it's a moment to educate their child.
Got it.
Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, the symptoms of COVID are the same as a cold or a flu.
They can be.
So people can get very anxious when they have a symptom of a cold.
Sure.
And their anxiety can shoot up to a 10 out of 10 or what seems like a panic attack.
Okay.
When people are at a 10 out of 10, which is not what most people are experiencing, but they can, we're not thinking as clearly as we would like. So we have to allow for the anxiety to come down, and then we can think more clearly.
I see. Okay, so in other words, it's kind of like, just let it pass. Just, you don't have, in other words, you don't really have to do anything. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Ideally, which this gets kind of technical, it would be to disengage from the fear. Easier said than done, right? And go into allow for the symptoms. No different than laughter. When we're laughing, we're not usually in our head thinking about what made us laugh. We're laughing because of something we just saw or heard. When the laughter comes down, we're more in tune to our thoughts.
I see.
Something that I do have people do just to kind of get an example of a range of anxiety or the fluctuation in it. In my practice, what I will do is I use sour as something analogous to the anxiety experience. So I'll give people a Swedish fish candy, for example, and I'll have them eat it and say, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, how sour is that candy? And presumably it's not very sour. Then I move up to a sweet tart.
Okay.
Then I go to the extreme sour, chewy sweet tart. And then I move on up to the extreme sour warhead, which is presumably the 10 out of 10. And if they could hold on to that intense candy over time, that candy is no longer sour.
I see. Okay.
So when you're eating the sour candy, you're not really so much in your thoughts, you're in your experience of the candy. It's either sour to you or it's not. So with anxiety in terms of the symptoms, those symptoms will come down. But as soon as we go back into our head, oh my God, I definitely have COVID, and the anxiety will go back up. So we have to wait for it to come back down to realize, okay, most things are not going to be COVID.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful to think about, because I'm wondering, obviously COVID is very real, and it's a normal fear to have. I mean, we should all be very concerned about COVID.
Right.
And yet we do still have to do our daily things. We have to keep to our routines. And so, if one feels that maybe they were exposed to COVID, I imagine that it's okay to go, okay, I need to handle this. Either I need to wait and see if symptoms happen, I need to self-isolate, I need to go get a test, and kind of like wait and see, right? And try to understand that COVID is real. It may be in the house or not, but panicking about it isn't going to help.
No, but we can't negate if panic happens.
Right.
We just can't respond to the panic. We have to respond in a way that's healthy. So if there's someone experiencing symptoms, they do need to isolate, or we need to take precautions to the greatest of our ability. Not everyone has space in their home to isolate. So it means that people are going to have to definitely wear their mask inside the home and definitely wash their hands. And the person who's ill, they're going to need to seek out some kind of medical care if their symptoms become too great.
Okay.
Not everyone is experiencing that, though.
Right.
But we want to control for what we can control.
What we can control.
And that's really empowering, which is what we want everyone to do, is to empower themselves to take control of the things that they can.
So I'm thinking of kids having to do school at home with a computer, and they see the teacher on the screen. What would you suggest, or is there a suggestion, if a teacher sees one of their students struggling, are there any tips that they can do in, let's say, during school?
Absolutely. Teachers need to be well aware of what COVID is, of course, and be able to respond well, identify the student. Hopefully they're able to pick up on some students and intervene, and be able to give them some important information, true and accurate information. So,
Okay.
and if need be, the student may want to speak with the counselor. Not everyone feels comfortable to do so, and that
Right.
is okay.
Morning.
But
Hi.
we also want for the student to ask their fear-based questions, and I think that's so important.
So what's a fear-based question?
Am I going to get it?
Okay.
Am I going to give it to somebody?
Okay.
Kids, the whole
Are-
gamut, the full range.
Are mom and dad going to be okay?
Are mom and dad going to be okay?
Or
Am I
grandma
going
and
to die?
grandpa?
Are they going to die?
Yeah. Okay.
And
Those
that is
are-
scary, and we can't negate that it's scary.
Right. And they should be able to ask those questions, right? Because
Absolutely.
those are normal questions to ask.
And then we need to provide accurate information.
Okay.
So, yes, there's fear, yes, there's anxiety, but we don't want to embellish the anxiety.
Right.
We want to help contain others, the
Okay.
teachers, the parents, to contain and provide some kind of, we talked about structure, but even within an interaction, to contain a situation, respond to questions that people may have.
Okay. So that was a lot of information about anxiety, and I get that. But what I want for people, if they take nothing else away, are what are the 3 things that I can do, 3 to 5 things that I can do
Okay.
if I'm experiencing anxiety?
So you want to keep structure. With structure, there tends to be less of an experience of anxiety.
Okay.
You want to, when you can, focus on the positive.
Okay. So
There's some
structure,
good things going on.
positive. Okay.
Additionally, you want to stop and take a deep breath from time to time.
Deep breath. Breathing is good. I think on all levels, breathing is good. And the deeper the breath, possibly the more calm you can feel.
Yes.
Okay. So
Limit the media. That's so important. I can keep going. I know it's
Yeah.
about 5 things we're supposed to come up with here, but
that's okay.
limit the media, social media, the TV.
So would you recommend to parents to really curtail social media with the kids and
Yes.
probably with themselves too?
With themselves too. Make it a reward, not something that's just a given. Do your homework, you want to work hard, you want to play, you want to have some downtime and fun, and you want your questions answered.
Okay.
So the structure, which includes eating right, sleeping enough hours,
Getting exercise.
exercise, hygiene. You want to stay connected to your friends in some way, whether it be on Zoom or call your friends, text your friends, something you want to have some sense of connectivity.
That old-fashioned conversation. Yeah. People don't have that much anymore. Or not
That's
as often
important.
as, I know I wish I had more conversations with my friends.
Maybe
So
some more
that's
elbow
helpful.
bumps, but
Elbow bumps. Yeah, we're all getting good at that, aren't we? Any other tips?
control the things that you can. You could read a book. You could find something to laugh at. Laughter is probably the best medicine.
That old adage is still true, isn't it?
Mhm.
Anything else?
I think
Structure, exercise, positive,
controlling what you can.
and laughter.
Laughter, stay away from boredom. I know it's easy to get bored, but definitely
There's always books.
there are always books.
Always
I know people are
books, I
rolling their
know.
eyes.
I know. Ugh, I read already. You can always read more. There's so many wonderful books out there, whether you want to read a good story or learn something new. Even read about scientists who created this one, all of our NASA program. I mean, my goodness, there's so many wonderful stories of people who did this. And I'm also wondering, a lot of you watching this may be wondering, what does this have to do with STEM? We're talking about anxiety and emotions, and that may not seem a natural fit. But what I want to ask Shayna is, and this is my own feeling, and it is just a thought that I'm having, but when we are calm, we can actually learn a lot better. So living with anxiety or jumping from an anxious thought to anxious thought is going to actually impede and keep us from learning to the best of our abilities. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes. Just real quickly, and I don't know how much time.
We have a little time.
Okay. We all have thoughts and we all have feelings. So we want to separate those out. Anxiety is a biological function. So it's right in line with STEM.
Okay.
It's a natural response that everybody has. The higher the anxiety, we tend to kind of focus on the negative. No, that's the time to allow for the anxiety, but when it's not that high, you want to shift focus, which is what we call mindfulness, shift our focus to doing things that need to get done. And if you crave information, then learn.
Yeah.
Read books.
Read books, learn.
Track your steps. I'm a big proponent of exercise.
Exercise is super important. And, you know, I'm hoping that we're talking to future scientists out there. You know, I mean, the world's your oyster, and there's so many things that you can do anything you want. And when you have the tools to, you know, yeah, you might get scared. We all get scared. But don't let that stop you. And in this era that we're all feeling a little more anxious than we used to, you still have this world of opportunity to keep learning and to keep exploring. And you know, if you like science, go for it. Just go for it. And I'm begging you, don't let fear get in your way. Because I know that there's a gazillion smart, brilliant minds out there, and we need you in STEM. So if this at all helps you, keep your focus on your studies and on the fun of all of these subjects. Because yeah, STEM is actually a lot of fun. I mean, when you see a rocket go to the moon or go into orbit, it's phenomenal. And that's the fun part, but you gotta do the work. So, you know, I'm hoping that this will help give you some tools, whether you're a student, a parent, an educator, to really keep the focus on what you want to do and what you need to do to keep moving forward, because we will all get through this, and also know that you're not alone. For more information on COVID and anxiety, please log into latinohealthtoday.com. Also, the Centers for Disease CDC, thank you, is available. They have excellent information as well. There are a lot of resources out there, so please make use of them. A lot of them also have information in Spanish if that's your preferred language. And yeah, be well. Thank you, everyone.